you doing, everybody? This is another episode of Flex Adapt with Intent, and I am Dina Hall. And tonight, once again, contemplating performing and visual arts during uncertain times. We do sort of meander around the topic from week to week. Tonight, we're going to go on the road, as it were, as it really were, because not only are the performing artists affected by a shutdown, venues are closed. That means the road crew is out of work as well. Tonight, we're going to talk with Jane Paul, who's a tour manager for Susan Werner, and Meredith Tarr, who's a tour manager for MPress Records, Rachel Sage. And won't you welcome both to the stream right now? Hello, ladies.
Hi, Dina.
Hello.
Good to
How are
see you? Good to see you. Meredith, we are meeting for the very first time, but I feel like I know you already.
You know, it's
Maybe we met
kindred
somewhere.
spirits. I feel like we probably met at Godfrey Daniels or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or NERFA. Did you go to NERFA?
Once. I went once. It was back, a long time ago. My very first time. I'm trying to think of when that was.
Which dying Catskills Resort was it at?
Exactly. Kerhonkson. It was in Kerhonkson. It was a giant mold shack, as I recall.
Yep.
Well, one of the buildings was.
Yes. Yep. People left with more than they came with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, we can talk about this because we have all the time in the world tonight. I had, it was my first time going and I didn't know what it was all about. And so I ended up, somehow looking at the boards for room sharing, trying to share a room with someone. And number one, I hate hotels. And number two, I just still am not comfortable with people I don't know. But I ended up finding a name of someone who had a room available to share, Kathy Moser. She was hosting.
She's great.
Kathy, I had met like once. I was like, okay, Kathy. Okay. Okay, sounds good. I feel comfortable. Kathy was hosting, though. She was hosting a guerrilla showcase, which means your room is available for complete strangers sitting on your bed until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's what NERF is all about. In exchange, I got to play 2 songs in her guerrilla showcase and saved a whole lot of money on the room fee. And, I just didn't deal well with not being able to go to bed when I wanted to go to bed. It's like all these people.
Yeah. That's the rough part.
So that was it. I did not return ever again. I wasn't for me.
Yeah. It's a very specific type of event that takes a specific mindset to be able to deal with. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I know it's a wonder. People they just love seeing each other year after year. And as I suppose NERFA will not be happening.
Not this year. I mean, it'll be virtual
at all.
Like pretty much everything else.
I think there was just an announcement about that, or an email that went around about that a couple days ago, saying it was going to be virtual this year.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. We have our first comment from the one and only Rachel Sage saying that is correct.
Rachel.
Yes.
Rachel knows all about having skanky feet on her bed in a Focal Alliance showcase.
Oh, wow.
I think Focal Alliance, we always decided at Focal Alliance or NERFA or whatever it was, after the first maybe 3 years of doing it, we said, okay, do not stay in the hotel where the conference is happening. Stay down the street, stay 2 blocks away. Dina, to your point, that way, you can just go back and get your bed.
That would have been helpful at the time.
Yeah.
Got it.
gives you a little break from the whole.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what we for the folks that don't know, there are people who are tuning in who really are not in tune to independent music, small record label, the scene and the community that you're both a part of. each of you can tell us a little bit about that. But how far back does your you know each other, right, for a long, long time?
Feels like the sandbox, you know.
Wow.
I think I was trying to remember this a couple of days ago, Meredith, that I think we probably met at one of Susan's shows way back, but we've definitely
1996, I think.
Yeah, we've known each other for almost as long as I've been working with Susan, which is 28 years. So,
Yeah.
and I think we have the kind of friendship at this point where usually in normal times, what's happening is I'll be on the road with Susan, Meredith will be on the road with Rachel and her band, oftentimes out of the country. And we won't talk to each other for a few months. And I'll just get a text from her that says, "You're not going to believe this one." And it'll be about,
and vice versa.
Yeah, like, you know, something that happened at something the sound man said, something somebody was there said that just tops whatever the last best story is that we just had. So, yeah, it's Meredith is, I consider, one of my closest friends for many years.
Likewise. And the whole reason that I am in this world is Jane's fault, because Jane took a sabbatical a while ago. When was that? 99?
It was 99 because I kind of lost my mind and decided I had to move to Seattle and quit all my jobs and sell my house and just jump off the planet. And I did it, you know, and 2 months later I was like, what the hell did I just do? So I ended up coming back. But during that time, Meredith took over tour managing Susan. And then when I came back,
after
Meredith,
never having done anything like that before.
Right.
But Jane is so organized, and I just had a 9-to-5 job in a marketing company, but I was a project manager. So I know how to make lists, and I had done corporate travel, and I just, knew all those sorts of things. And I'd been to a ton of shows and was trying to be one of those fans who's helpful without crossing over into creepy.
Oh yes.
And one of these days I am going to write the book on that, because I've been threatening to do that for 20 years. But anyway, and so Jane was so organized and had left everything. And so it was just a matter of me literally just sort of taking the keys of the van and jumping in and just figuring it out as I went. But it was basically just whatever Jane does, I'll do. And I really got the trial by fire, just taking Susan around to her gigs on the weekends. And that was my, music industry 101, was just doing that. And then Jane came back and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not doing that anymore. And then the opportunity came up a few years later to go on the road with Rachel Sage, who was another musician that I had started to become useful without being creepy in some ways. And I was a presenter at that point. So I was, I knew more about that side of it as well. But it's all Jane's fault. It's pretty much
Jane.
everything. It's all your fault.
Well, Jane has a nickname, aka Famous Jane.
Yeah, she says that.
Yeah, I've seen this. That's what you were when I first met you. And so Meredith, you don't have one of those names, do you?
I'm tour mistress of the darkness.
Tour mistress of the darkness. Great.
Yeah, that's my Instagram bio. Yeah, Rachel dubbed me that years ago.
I will have to look that one up. Oh, yes.
It's funny that when Meredith says trial by fire, and she sort of stepped in when I left and stuff. She started touring with Rachel and has so much more experience internationally. And even I think, Meredith, I've asked you a couple of times when we were going into Canada, what's the deal now? What do you have to have? What paperwork do you have to have? So she's got a lot more experience because we don't do a lot of international travel. We
hang on. Every once in a while, the stream gets a little funny, and I thought that I had the Bluetooth connected. So I want to make sure
Oh, okay.
that that's the one we're using. Hopefully I won't lose anything here. We're switched over.
Okay.
We're switched over. We're all good?
All right. I think we're all good.
All right, we're
right.
fine. It makes that funny noise. It sounds like a womp, 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 womp,
Oh,
womp,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
yeah.
it's good,
Yeah,
right? That was a
so-
good impression.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I was just saying that just in terms of, in the beginning, I taught Meredith a few things. And at this point, she could teach me a whole heck of a lot more, especially if we ever did start doing international travel, which is highly unlikely right now. But
Yeah.
Right now.
maybe in the future. So,
So Meredith, when I'm thinking back to, I think I know when I might have met you. You were probably working with Rachel when she played at Godfrey Daniels back in maybe 2000. Is that possible?
I wouldn't have been with her then, but she played
Yeah.
a few times. We did
Yeah.
we
Well, if you-
did New Year's Eve one time. And
All
we
right.
did a show with Sonia. We did a
Yeah,
show
yeah.
there with Seth Gleer.
Yeah. So that's the one. That's the one. I know I was there for that.
Yeah.
That's when we met. See, it all comes
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I knew I'd met you there at some point. Yeah.
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 So all these years, you just you do your thing, right? And so has this been a full-time thing or somewhat full-time for either of you?
go ahead, Meredith.
It's been pretty much full time for me because Rachel also has MPress Records. And when I first started with her, that was just basically just to put out her own music. But then we met Seth Gleer at a gig. He was opening for her, and we ended up signing him not long thereafter. And so I kind of got another business card that said A&R after that. And so, I've just been working on the staff of the label in addition to doing the tour management. And I've, also branched out more recently into doing booking for Rachel as well. So yeah, it's been full time for quite a while. And the label stuff has filled in when we haven't been on the road, which has been good.
Yeah. Jane?
For me, it is part-time. And Dina, as you and I were talking about before, my family has a marketing communications firm just outside of Philadelphia where I've been employed for probably 30 years, full-time for about 5 years. And then when I started going on the road with Susan, I went down to part-time. And I am still there part-time. And I'm really glad that I am, and really fortunate that I'm able to be, because I am still working right now. What I've been doing with Susan in the meantime during the COVID is, kind of really, really minor consulting on things. Like she's doing her Susie on Sundays shows every Sunday night. And Kelly Lynn Knott, I have to talk about, because Kelly Lynn is not only a singer-songwriter and a very, very good one. She's also a whiz at streaming live shows and getting the best sound and the best visuals and making sure everything works. And Kelly has just been a godsend to the Susie on Sunday shows. Producing them and directing them. And so I've been jumping in on their sound checks a little bit and making comments here and there for that and stuff like that. Susan did just put out a new record. So I listened to a couple of the rough tracks before it was mastered. And we always go back and forth on stuff. And we actually did have 3 shows this summer.
Yeah.
All outdoors. Which were great, really great fun. But it is part-time. Most of the time I am on the road with Susan on the East Coast. And I'm in the Midwest and on the West Coast if she will have a string of shows where she really needs the help driving and stuff like that. So if she has one show in the Midwest, I probably am not going to fly out for that and fly home. If she has 3 or 4, I will. If she has a band, I will probably be there, even if it is one show, because there's a lot more coordination involved and a lot more moving parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's part-time for me.
Well, you brought up the Susie on Sundays. That was actually, you remind me that was actually the inspiration for me to figure out how to do this thing that we've got going
that's
on
great.
here with more than one person in the screen. And I had been trying to come up with something. Some people don't know my involvement with Godfrey Daniels. Aside from being board chair, I am the communications chair. So this thing was it was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How do we get live stream? How do we get people in? What do we? And I had seen the first time Susan had Trina Hamlin watch that whole thing, and I thought, oh my gosh, how are they doing that? How are they doing that? There's the two of them. And I think I asked you. I think
That's
Jane,
Kelly.
I sent you an email and asked you, and you had no idea. So Kelly Lynn,
Lynn Knott. And
Kelly
I'll tell
Lynn
you what,
Knott.
this is what has happened. So Kelly Lynn, not only is she great at what she does, she's really professional. She works with people she hasn't met before. She's very likable. She's very easy to work with and very smart. So Susan does a show with Dar Williams on Susie on Sundays. And then Kelly starts working with Dar's live streams. And then Susan does a show with Jonathan Brooke. And now Kelly's working on Jonathan Brooke's live streams. I mean, she's that good. She's really, really good. But she's also probably really, really busy now. Plus, she does her own live stream shows where she plays and sings.
Wow.
In fact, it was last night. It's Tuesday nights at 7:30 is Kelly's show. So,
well, I'll be calling Kelly on the phone.
Yeah, you got to have Kelly. Like, these
chat.
times require Kelly.
All right.
Yes.
I think this is just a prime example of how it's all who you know. And if you are good at something, then that's, and I think that's the kind of thing that is sustaining so many people right now who are able to be keeping their heads above water, because if they can find a way to make whatever this is that we're doing work, and I think, and I've found that people are being really willing to help other people. There's not so much of that compartmentalization or competition, whereas like this platform that you're using now, I first saw Erin McKeown use way back in April. And so I emailed her and I was like, how are you doing that? Because because we had the back in the early April, our label, we did a virtual festival. We did a virtual Empress Fest to benefit Sweet Relief COVID-19 Fund. Because we just all had to do something, and we were all kind of losing our minds and still trying to figure it out. Like, what equipment do you need, and how do you make things sound good and look good and all that. And everyone was still very much figuring it out. And I thought like, oh, well, maybe we'll just do like this Facebook Live thing. But then I saw Erin do this really slick looking thing, and so I emailed her and said, how did you do that? And she's like, oh, here's how I did it, and here's how you set it up. And so then we were, I was able to make our festival look a little bit better and be on both Facebook and YouTube at the same time, which at the time was like, wow, you can do that. And I've seen over the past few months, this collaboration that, Erin is such a man. She would have answered that question no matter what, but I've seen people work together and reach out that may not have been as apt to do that, 6-7 months ago. So that's been kind of cool to see, everyone's sort of in the same foxhole and trying to just make it work. So that's been cool.
Yes. Erin told me about her trick of having pre-recorded applause track.
You need to figure that out.
Susan does that with a keyboard.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I think it definitely is weird. It must be weird for the artists. They're playing and they're used to this response, and it's like,
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen some Zoom. I mean, Zoom has its drawbacks, but one cool
Yeah.
thing is it allows for some of that interaction, where people
Yes.
can make noise
can.
and
as
whatever.
long as one's mic is muted appropriately and they're not discussing
you have to have someone behind the
trip to
curtain.
the grocery store while the
Yeah.
song is being played. Yeah. Yes. A few weeks ago, probably over a month now, I talked with Aaron and Natalia Zuckerman and Matt the electrician about that whole StreamYard thing. I just stumbled upon it because I was really trying to find stuff. But one day I happened to be, I don't really like the word troll, but I was trolling Facebook, someone who I don't know why or what or whatever, the young people who actually have a punk band, and accidentally saw that they were using this thing. And the logo, the StreamYard logo was up in the top. That's the free version. No one knows that we're using it because I don't have that version.
Yeah.
So it's not on here, although we talk about it. So anyway, I went from there. I looked into it, and it's been quite helpful at this point. So the two of you essentially have not. Well, you've done a little bit here and there road work, in the live setting since March. I know, Jane, you had a couple of things recently, right? This thing in Malvern was.
It was amazing.
Unique.
It was it gave me so much hope, I guess, when I saw that, this is it's People's Light and Theater in Malvern, and they have a series, and what they're doing is they're putting up these Sunday concerts at 4:00, and people pull in their cars, and you get the parking spot for your car, and you get the spot open just to the left of your car. So then you take out your lawn chairs and set them up. And when I was trying to visualize it before we got there, I thought, is everybody going to be able to see? Because there's all these cars. But they have the stage up so high. The stage was built up on a platform that everybody could see.
Yeah.
Everybody was socially distanced. Everybody was wearing masks. The whole sound crew was wearing masks. They had people running around with these little carts that had beer and wine in them and snacks and stuff. People were tailgating like I haven't seen since the Eagles game at the Link. I mean, shrimp. They had shrimp. They had chicken. People were going all out. And I think, it gave me a lot of hope because I see that's a venue that is normally an indoor venue innovating. And like you're saying, the theme of your show, Adapt with Intent, that is what it's about. And figuring out a way to do it and keep the music alive and keep the artists busy and the sound crews busy and work with what you have in order to keep that going. And they did it and they pulled it off. And like I said, it's September, 23rd, and it was 80 degrees here today. So I think those kinds of shows, if the venue has the physical space outside of the building to do that kind of thing, conceivably those kinds of shows could go into early October. And Dina, have you been to Havana's up in New Hope?
I know where it is, exactly where it is. I might have had a drink there once.
Okay. So I go up there in the winter a lot because there's a bar outside and they have these
heaters,
big
right?
propane heaters.
Yeah.
And I thought about that the other night and I thought, well, when it gets cold, why can't we just grab 10 of those?
Yeah.
Stage lights are probably warm enough to keep an artist warm. The only thing that we can't do is that we can't do is be in a building. So I think if everybody gets behind the idea that we are going to do this and we're going to work around whatever obstacles there are, that this can work, At least I hope so.
Yeah, and I've thought about those things too. I think the only stumbling blocks I think are the quantity. Like, you can't have quite as many shows as, and some people are not going to be a draw, so they're just not going to get hired.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
tough. I mean, I think that's kind of where the online thing is, what's going to sustain people. I mean, I think you know, and we're already starting to see it a little bit, where people are charging tickets, to, you know, to access some of these live streams, and people seem to be willing to toss in some money to watch an online show. They're not expecting them all to be free all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, so like for the people, you know, for whom, you know, a drive-in show isn't viable from a draw perspective, they can at least, you know, work with a local venue and, you know, split the proceeds in some way, just to, you know, keep something coming in, so that it's not just zero, you know. And I mean, that's just going to have to be how it works for at least, you know, at least through the winter.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, everyone said this all along, you know, we were the first industry to shut down and we'll be the last to come back. And that's just absolutely true. And then it's like, well, how many venues are still going to be around when we're finally allowed to come back? And it's going to be significantly less. So I think people are going to have to kind of make their own virtual venues, in some ways, in order, like, even if they even want to continue to, you know, to have a touring career, you know, touring, you know, what's that going to mean? But on the flip side of that, you can also do a gig, you know, for a venue overseas that you may never have been able to get to before. You know, like the Green Note in London has been doing gigs, you know, online gigs twice a week for months, and they're going to continue doing that. And they're bringing people from all over the world, with those audiences coming from all over the world. So even if you know, can't get on a plane and fly to London, you can still do a gig with Green Note that is on UK time, so that audience can see you. So there's opportunities to, you know, expand audiences, even though you can't physically go anywhere.
That's a really important thing you just brought up about the time.
Right.
Thinking ahead to, you know, you're going to do this in conjunction with a particular venue. You want it to be beneficial to their region. Or
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so you got to be willing, you know, if you're a musician, you got to be willing to be ready to sing at 3 p.m. Eastern, because that's 8 p.m. London time. If you're, you know, or 9 p.m. Berlin time, or whatever, you know, venue you're working with. And if you can be that flexible, you know, there's like literally a whole world that can open to you that you may not have been able to get to before. And I think that the people that are willing to embrace that, are going to be better, better positioned to come out of this still okay, in whatever world this shakes out to be, where, you know, we're not going to have as many places to physically go to play. So, you know, what is in there in the virtual space that we can take advantage of.
Right. The other cool thing about that I've noticed just in watching the Susie on Sunday shows is, the thing that's really cool about it is you're reaching so many more people than you would reach at a regular show. And it's just kind of cool to be in the room and see the comments come up, and see somebody commenting from Philadelphia, and then the next comment is from, you know, Los Angeles or Sacramento or something. It's just, it brings the whole community of people together in one place at one time, which is really fun and not something that ever happened before this.
And just like now, you know, we're having this conversation, and we have commenting from like Kelly Lynn, not right now. It's fun to see artists developing relationships with fans who see them only once in a great while.
Right.
And, you know, how lucky for me, I've got Rachel Sages commenting on something that I'm presenting here. And this is like, it would never have happened before, right? Hey, Rachel. Some artists like Lisa Loeb and Howard Jones are doing 2 shows each time, like at 3 and 8 o'clock p.m., for instance.
Yeah, working with the time zones. Yeah. and it's also more accessible in general, like for people who have physical,
Yeah.
impediments to be able to get out to a show for whatever reason. Then it doesn't matter because the show's coming to them now. And I think, the venues that are still going to be around after this, or the new venues that come up after this. I mean, I think they're going to be wise to consider those audiences and how to keep them. And like, I personally don't see this online live stream component going away. I'm already seeing venues like, Rockwood Music Hall. I mean, they've invested in these HD cameras and, multi-switching things so that they can, stream from stage 2. I mean, you make that investment, you're not going to just turn it off and toss it out once people are able to come back.
Yeah.
I think, these venues, if they realize that they can expand their audiences beyond the people that are able to physically be in the room, that's just going to help everybody. So it's an opportunity, I think, for things to change in a really exciting way.
So on the money making end of it, and I'm not going to pry into anybody's income, but so Rachel, I'm sorry, Meredith, when you had the Empress Festival, was it a ticketed event?
It was not ticketed. We had a donation link. It was 100% for Sweet Relief, and it was all our label roster, and everybody donated their time. I mean, the sets were only like 20 minutes, so it wasn't like it was taking up,
Yeah.
But it was a benefit, and it did pretty well. I mean, people were willing, especially at that time in April, where it was really in the forefront of people's minds that, like, oh my God, all these people are suddenly out of work and need help. And I think, and people were maybe a bit more able to give themselves than they might be now. So it was free, but we were really encouraging donations, and a lot of people did. So
that was successful in that regard. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. And do we think that? I mean, there are multiple levels of where on the tier of where a musician, an artist, an independent artist, where they might be someone who has a label, who's helping promote and support all of that, and then there are those that are doing it all on their own, and then there's the local bar musician, and so there's so many levels of quality that's out there that people are watching. I'm wondering about how that money is being is it equitable? You know what I mean? So are the people that are really making a living but aren't charging tickets, but if you were to go see them, you'd certainly be paying a ticket price. But the bar musician who's not charging a ticket price, and you'd never pay really a ticket to see them, I'm wondering if there's an equity in how tipping is happening. Just
I mean, what I've seen personally is, I live in New Haven, Connecticut, and we have Cafe 9 downtown, and they're known as the Musician's Living Room, and that's kind of where all the local scene goes. But they have, touring musicians that come through, and they, they really have the gamut. But they've done a few things where they've had some of the local folks who are those bar musicians that would just be paying for tips or whatever. And they have a suggested donation, and everything is divided equally between Cafe 9, because they've also had like a rolling GoFundMe since March to like keep their staff, from starving. And keep the rent paid and stuff like that. So like they've been dividing it 50-50 between the band or the artist and the venue. And people, from what I've seen, have been totally fine with kicking in and having it be divided that way.
Yeah.
You know, because the musicians know that if Cafe 9 goes away, then that's like
Right.
their place to play in town goes away.
Right.
Well, that's what
So-
Godfrey's is for a lot of people too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, on our end, we're just so the support from members and the community is incredible. So, you know, we're delving into the live stream. That's where, and I'm going to talk about this in a couple of weeks. There's that dilemma. Do we make these a pay what you will, a suggested donation, or do we make it a ticketed? Which is, you know, is either one going to be a failure? Then
well,
we should.
I mean, you can always just try both and see what works out. I think that's a tough call, you know, and I wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've seen is like Eventbrite lets you do a minimum. So you could say, like, you know, pay what you want, minimum $5 or $10 or whatever you think it's going to be. Because I mean, I found this. I had a house concert series for 10 years, and I always found, and it was all suggested donation because house concerts, that's how it has to be.
Yep.
And I always found every single show I did, you know, if my suggested donation was $10 and I had 30 people there, I always had at least $300 to give the artist at the end of the day. And I knew for a fact that some people hadn't paid, but other people pitched in more, and it all averaged out. And this was consistent for the entire 10 years. Is I
never
ended up
paid
with
when
at
I
least-
went.
Yeah,
to
I know
your house.
you know,
never-
Jane. It's because you know
That's
you're
why
such a
she's famous.
deadbeat.
Just kind of.
Yeah. Well, you know, we all get into this gig so we don't ever have to pay for a show again,
Right.
ever.
That's why you volunteer.
Yeah. You know, and Susan's tickets can be a little spendy, so you know, I understand.
That's the point.
They weren't
Yeah.
always. It's been a long, hard-fought uphill. Yeah.
My
But,
Yeah.
but Godfrey's cannot go away ever.
I don't think that it ever will. And that's one of the things I wanted to get to next is that, you know, we're seeing venues that are closing. I mean, it's happening. We're reading about it every day.
Yeah.
We're also seeing others that seem to be doing okay, and they're finding ways to make this work. Cafe Lena is one. They've been doing a lot of. They've been streaming right from their own stage. I think Passim is doing okay from what we
Passim's
see.
hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Godfrey's will be okay as well, just because that history. I mean, you
Right.
go back so many years, and you have like an organization like Godfrey Daniels, which is a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Simply
and Passim
presenting,
is as well, and
simply
Cafe Lena
present.
is too, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
But they have Cafe Lena has a cafe component. I believe they might even sell alcohol. I'm not even sure. But they
do.
And they just had a wonderful, you know, renovation, a remodeling, beautiful work. I don't know what kind of debt they have, but like a Godfrey's has no debt. So
Yeah.
So really it's just operating expenses, you know, to carry you through what has to happen next, which is different from someplace that might be thinking of like near Eugene, the Locks at Sona,
Right.
which recently opened, which is a bar, which has staff.
Yep. And not only that, I mean, I just saw World Cafe Live.
That too.
Downtown is doing live stream shows. I think City Winery is going to do them. I can't remember.
I think I heard
Pretty
that
sure
too.
they are. Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, it's going to become like, okay, you want to go to a show, or you really love this artist, you really want to see this artist. Where are they going to be? And you go to their webpage or their tour calendar, and you know it's going to be World Cafe live stream. The dates are going to be showing you what venues they're partnering with, and all of that. And to Meredith's point about, you know, whether or not live stream shows are sustainable, I think they absolutely are. I mean, I think that if you have a weekly show and you've got a pretty consistent audience tuning into that show, and you can keep it going even after you start up live touring again, as slowly as that may be. You may just want to keep that live stream show going.
Yeah.
You know, if it's been successful.
Yeah, don't lose that audience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. Oh, one thing, we were talking about the venues that happen to also be nonprofits. I mean, at least, like Godfrey Daniels. I mean, the nonprofit that gives you other avenues for potential funding to get you through as well.
Right. That's right.
That other venues don't have. And I mean, that's kind of where, my soapbox that I've been on is the Save Our Stages campaign.
Yes.
I have that right here.
Yeah, because if we don't want to end up in a world where the only venues in town are the ones owned by Live Nation, we need to have government help to keep these independent venues like Rockwood and Cafe 9 and World Cafe Live and the Locks at Sona and all these places. And if that doesn't happen, I mean, we're looking at an extinction level event for independent venues within, before the end of this calendar year. So, it's really up to everyone who's ever been to a live show and wants to go to a show again to, be contacting their rep and, make sure that this comes through, because without it, the virtual live streams are basically going to be the only option anyone ever has.
Right.
Until,
Yeah, I've been pushing out those messages as well. I put the link to NIVA, National Independent Venue Association. I put it in the comments. Anyone who's interested in what we're talking about, you click on that and there'll be some information there. And typically what they have are any kind of initiative that might be happening where they want you to sign a letter to legislators. You sign it and it will automatically, you put in your zip code and it'll automatically go to your particular legislators in your area where you live. There's a lot of work going into that. Whoever picked that up, wow. I mean, I would like to congratulate them that's a lot of work. And dedication.
Yeah, I think it was folks
done.
from the Bowery Presents and I forget some of the venues out in LA that kind of got together to start that. But yeah, I mean, I think that industry needed an association before, but this was the real kick in the pants to get them to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got the legislation is there, and the Senate support, I think, is there, and they just have to put it up for a vote. But I think the Senate's busy with something else right now.
They got a couple things.
Yeah, they're busy not doing most of the things they should be doing right now.
They might not be focused on this right now, but phone calls never hurt, and just keep calling and emailing.
Resist bot is your friend.
Yes.
Yeah. We do have a question here from Ralston Bowles. Perhaps it was discussed already, but what about the plans for Mark Z? I'm assuming he means Mark Zuckerberg, having Facebook restrict streaming of music.
Meredith, you know more about this than I do. There was a little boop a few weeks ago where they stopped.
There was a
streaming
kerfuffle about that. But
yes, there was.
Mainly, the way they wrote those terms and conditions was, I think, deliberately, but really, really vague. But basically, it just comes down to live streams are okay. What Facebook doesn't want people doing is turning their video pages on their band pages into YouTube channels where you post your music videos or like put your album up, just for people to listen to in the background. They don't want that. But live performances are okay. But that said, it's always a good idea to steer away from covers, because the whole cover thing for a video, especially if you keep it archived on your page, then all of a sudden, like what's the sync license situation for that? It's like a legal gray area that has yet to really be hammered out. And it's a licensing thing. And plus we don't really know like what Facebook is paying BMI and ASCAP and CSAC and all those things. And that's the sort of thing that's really going to need to be shaken out. So I think Facebook was trying to like cover their butts with this. But their clarification that they put out a week or so ago just says like, performances are okay.
Yeah, everybody relax.
Everybody relax.
Yeah, it's like, no, we want you to do that.
I think they also saw like all these people being like, okay, we're piecing out and we're only going to do it on YouTube. And they were like, whoa, no.
Yeah.
No, we need you. We need you.
Yeah, they stopped one of Susan's, they cut off something in one of Susan's shows. And Kelly knows a lot more about this than I do. And then we sort of investigated it and we were like, nobody owns, like that is 100% Susan ownership. She wrote it. She She owns the publishing to it. There was no reason for them to have done that.
If there's anything that the little crawler
picks up,
that's looking, picks up that could sound like something, or also, I mean, MPress Records is distributed through ultimately Universal Music Group, and they pull our own releases down all the time. Like we just had like a SoundCloud issue like for the 18th time the other day. Like, so we, they put, flags up for things that are our own because there's so many layers, and it's just these little crawlers, these little bots that go around looking for audio fingerprinting. And if it, comes up, then it's like, oh, yep, this is a problem. And so if you're performing something that sounds a lot like any of these audio fingerprints, so like, it could be your own song, but if it just happens to sound like a lot like you're recording at that time, it could get flagged. But that's been the case for months already. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with these new terms and conditions that are going in. It's just, one of those like, where we haven't really activated Skynet yet. And this is the some of the bumps in the road that are going to happen before the machines completely take over and the robots rule the world. So
making me feel so good.
So what you can do is talk to your artist, your singer-songwriter, and tell them they have to find a way to outsmart the bot.
How to outsmart?
Yeah, they have to cover themselves.
Cover yourself.
You can actually whitelist your own page. There is a way on Facebook to whitelist your own music. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it is possible.
And what does that mean?
Whitelisting means like if anything gets flagged, it's okay. It's actually all right because I own this music or whatever. Wow. And I don't personally have experience with how it works, but there's someone at Empress that's working on this. And for like whitelisting Rachel's stuff, because, she also does live streams at least once a week. And, we don't want anything to get caught up in this. So there is a way for your page to get for you to whitelist songs, tracks, so that they won't necessarily get caught up in that from yourself.
This is so interesting because not every artist is a writer. Not every artist is playing their own original music. I mean, right all the way to the top. I keep using this example, but Martina McBride's Independence Day. Well, she gets all the credit for it. She can sing it over and over again. She probably doesn't own one single, I don't know. I mean, does she own any of it? I mean, it's Gretchen Peters wrote the song. If Gretchen Peters was to play that song, would someone say, "Oh, you're covering Martina McBride"?
Maybe.
I mean,
someone who didn't know, but I
Didn't
think
know.
from a legal perspective, no, because
No.
she wrote the song, so
She
she's
has the
listed as the
rights.
writer,
Yeah.
and she owns at least part of the publishing on it. I would imagine.
I would imagine.
You
But-
know, yeah, because I mean, there's the artist side, and there's the writer side for performance royalties. So,
And then, of course, there's the when you write the song and then you sell it to whomever.
right, if you sell it, then
Then you don't own any of it. You just
don't
are the
own any of
writer.
it anymore. Yeah,
So then you literally are covering someone else, even though you wrote it.
I guess technically you
Technically,
would be.
you're
Yeah.
covering someone else's ownership,
Yeah.
property. Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
sold
No,
your
it-
soul to the
Yes,
devil.
you did. Well,
Yeah.
how
I
much
mean,
was it
you
worth?
know, yeah, I mean, to
at that.
go back to like one of the one of the things
Rachel lives with
that
Martina McBride.
I don't think that's what she means.
Oh.
I love Martina.
I think she loves
one of the
Martina
things if
McBride.
you work with an artist is you need to make sure that they turn off autocorrect on their devices. But, one of the things as a tour manager that is in my list of duties is filling in the set list for BMI Live when we were in real venues, and you know, it would be really nice if Facebook and YouTube were able to be listed as venues so you can get your live.
That would be
You know,
great.
All right. So
And
that's,
these are the kinds of things that like BMI and ASCAP and CSAC and PRS for music and all these associations all over the world really need to be shaking out because, you know, this, like we've been talking about, this live streaming is not going away.
so
But
maybe
if
that's
we
where
want
they're
it
headed.
to, I mean, it's got to be worked out,
Yeah.
you know.
That's a good point.
Here's a lot of people don't understand how all of this whole performing rights organizations, the PROs, right? That's the way. We
PROs, yeah.
PROs. We hear that used all the time in this industry on a lot of levels, but not everyone knows exactly what it means, and they don't understand it all. And a lot of people get upset that they actually pay fees to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. There's another one. What is it? I learned it today. GR.
Well, there's GRM or GEMA in Germany,
Okay.
and in UK it's PRS.
Okay.
There's a bunch.
So venues pay fees to them based on a lot of things, right? Seating capacity, how many shows, all of that kind of stuff. And then restaurants, bars, and anyone else who might have live music in-house is supposed to.
Or even if they're just
Also,
playing music over their system, they're supposed to.
We had an issue here in Northampton County Courthouse was fined because they weren't paying fees and they were playing music throughout the courthouse.
Yep.
Interesting, right?
Huh.
So, but me as an artist, you know, I go into my BMI and every time there's a show and I fill those things in and that's how we get paid for.
I do that
You
for
get paid more for
Susan's.
that than you do for
Yeah.
Spotify.
Yep.
Yeah. So the question is, when one is filling those things out, how does it? Meredith, maybe you know, how does it work when someone is just playing all cover songs?
If you are playing all cover songs, you're still supposed to fill it out, but then the writer of the song gets the money for you playing it live and not you.
Right. So there's no. You're not penalized for playing it.
You're not penalized for playing it. You're not helped by playing it either.
Right.
And I probably shouldn't say this in public, but
No,
like
then
when my
don't-
artist
then don't.
plays a cover, I'll just say she played another one of her songs at that time.
You just leave it.
Yeah. Just leave it off.
You leave it off.
Leave it off.
Leave it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do the same thing
Yeah.
for twice a year with ASCAP on stage, and you know, I think it's about April of every year I fill those things out. And I was just thinking that, Meredith, I'm like, what am I going to write for this year?
Right.
There's been a show every single Sunday,
But Facebook Live is not a venue
Yeah, it's
that
not a venue.
counts.
right.
So
Radio was the
Yeah.
same thing. If I would play a radio in studio show, that's not
yeah.
valid either.
Yeah. So like the 3 shows that Susan did this summer would count, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was able
live
to fill
shows.
out just the ones that where you were actually in a venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're in Tucson, right?
I am
Meredith?
right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's warm there all year, isn't it?
Mostly. Yeah. Not so much in December and January, but the
Maybe I
rest
get
of the
some-
year, yeah.
Got to get some gigs in Tucson.
There you go.
You totally
Outs-
should.
Set it up.
Outside.
We have a friend who
Set it
can
up.
hook us up
I've
in
got this
Bisbee.
plan in my head. I've got San Diego, San Antonio, Tucson, Florida. Let's go.
Albuquerque, my
I'm
friend
ready to
Neil
go.
in Albuquerque, he's been doing drive-in shows for the last couple months. I guess they've gone pretty well in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Yeah,
I mean, I'm telling you, I got on the Pennsylvania Turnpike last Sunday on the way to this drive-in concert, and I was like, I'm driving on the highway. I felt like myself for the first time in like 4 months. It was great.
that's
So I
amazing.
miss
There was an article on No Depression today. It was someone who wrote like a step-by-step of what she would have been doing if she'd had a gig tonight. Like starting with, like 4:15, like, oh, I should probably, load ins at 5:30. I have to do blah, 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 blah. And by the end of it, I was like, this just destroyed me emotionally.
Yeah.
Because it's been 6.5 months at this point since I've had to,
I almost
get ready
forgot
for
how
a
much
gig.
I missed it. Yeah, and Meredith, you would have been dying because we're on the stage, and we're plugging in the DI and stuff, and I said, and Susan's grabbing stuff, and I said it was just kind of disorganized. We usually have this well-oiled machine where it's like we get there and boom, 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 and all this stuff happens.
Yep.
And we just looked at each other, and I was like, "Oh my God, we're just so out of practice.
How do you do this?
How does it happen?
Susan forgot the DI. She left it in her house because she was doing the Susan on Sunday shows. So we had to use a different, everything just kind of went, ugh. And the show was great and everything worked out fine, obviously. But it was just, it would probably take maybe 2-3 shows to really get in the rhythm again
I was thinking the other day, I was like, would I even remember where the on switch on Rachel's keyboard is at this point? Like, I might have to look at the manual. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah. It's
Very
wild.
true. The first time I got in the car to drive since March, and it was probably June, and I drove down the road. It's called street, but it's a road. And I'm telling you, I was all over the line. I was like on the left side of the road. I didn't know what I forgot how to drive.
Yeah.
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 And I'm not the only one.
See that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. So I guess what we're hearing now is that both of you have figured out, what your role is, even though you're not the artist doing the live stream, and again, that sort of is singles out the singer-songwriter and the solo, the person who can sing and play the instrument, or if it's just instrumental. But it leaves out, a lot of the side players. It leaves out, any kind of road crew. It certainly leaves out merch people.
Oh yeah.
So y'all have to seems like you have figured out a positive way forward, and
Trying to. Yeah.
kinda have
we're
to.
just,
and thinking creatively and entrepreneurially,
yeah.
if that's a word. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm lucky to, work with an artist who couldn't stop even if you tried to make her. So, I mean, for the past month or so, we've been working on this, she's been, it's mainly all her, has been working on this benefit show that's happening tomorrow. And it's a benefit for the Foundation for Women's Cancer. And, we've got Paula Cole and Lisa Loeb and Megan Hilty and all sorts of amazing people and folks from our label like Grace Pettis, and we have Heather May and Chris Matthews and this amazing lineup. And
I didn't know
all
they
of us,
were all.
well, the one Grace Pettis is on our label. Everybody else isn't. But
Okay.
yeah, but it's just this, really great lineup. And so everyone at the label, we've really just jumped on board to like, how do we help this happen? And so like I made the website for it and, figuring out how we're going to collect the donations and blah, blah, blah. And, this is really, given us something to do for the last, month. And it's, trying to keep the wheels turning and to have, something to do. And, you can't just sit around and be like, oh, okay, well, how many more months is it going to be before we can do what we did?
Right.
You've got to figure out, well, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been very, very informative and somewhat eye-opening for me. I'm sure for others too. We've sort of hit our 1 hour mark. So, is there anything else we need to touch on here that we missed or you don't want to leave without saying?
I miss you, Meredith.
Miss you, Jane. I know. I would just like to put the shameless plug out for this benefit that I just
Please
mentioned.
do.
It's at braveryonfire.com, and it'll be at 8:00 Eastern tomorrow. And it'll be also simulcasting on Rachel's Facebook and YouTube, which you can get to from rachelsage.com. But that's free to view, and we're just encouraging donations for the Foundation for Women's Cancer. So
Thank you. That's good. Yeah. No.
So,
shameless promotions
shameless
are not
plug.
shameless. You got to talk about what you got going on. That's very important. Rachel put that in the comments as well.
Cool.
The link to that.
Yeah.
And
Jane, does Susan have any more in-person shows coming up, or was this Melbourne one
She
the last
does.
one?
She has one at the Zeiterion Theater up in New Bedford, Mass, which is kind of the anchor theater for the New Bedford Folk Festival right there. We have a gig on Thursday, October 22nd. And I think it's going to be basically the same kind of situation as People's Light was. It's a drive-in type show. So that's coming up. I haven't put it on the calendar yet. I didn't get all the paperwork in yet with the exact website and everything. But if people keep their eyes on Susan's tour page, as soon as I have the information and it's completely nailed down, I will put it up. But we have that. And then the Susie on Sundays she is just still going on that and coming up with new ideas and new themes. She has a different theme every week for every show. So that's kept it interesting and fresh. And she's doing that every Sunday night at 7 p.m. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
And very enjoyable. I have laughed.
Thank you for having us.
Laughed through dinner. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to give another shameless plug too. This program is truly just a labor of love for me. But I am anyone who wishes to donate anything, 10% of any tips are being donated to Turning Point of the Lehigh Valley, which is a resource here that provides services and other resources and shelter for domestic abuse victims. As we know, that is something to really be concerned about during a pandemic when people are stuck at home with abusive others. So paypal.me/Dina Hall 2020. That's the link for that. And I also want to mention that next Wednesday, September 30th, I will have Lily Aniel, Lizanne Knott, and Catherine Rondeau, all Philadelphia area songwriters, musicians, and recording artists right here on the program.
Very cool.
Which much more coming up. Thank you both. One thing we do before we leave is try to give a high five. So I have to go up. It's not easy. Can anybody else try to do this to either? Don't do it to me because that's too easy. You have to do it to each other. Right?
No, it's backwards.
Oh,
No, wait, what?
It's backwards.
It's
Oh
better.
my God, my brain is not
Cross
built
your
for this.
hands. Cross.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
That just broke my brain.
That will be that is my claim to fame. All right.
Thank you,
So,
Dina.
Great to see you.
Thank you
All
very
right?
much, Dina.
Say hello to everybody, and I'll see you soon, I hope.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yes, I hope to see everybody soon. We had a couple more comments in here that we missed up. Kelly Haller, and best wishes to you all. Thanks for streaming. And lots of hand claps. Oh, also, Rachel wants to tell us that Susan's live streams set the bar. But if you can catch her live and in person, you are lucky indeed. That is very true. Same goes for Rachel Sage. Lucky indeed. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. These conversations are, they really are enlightening in some ways. You kind of always walk away with something you didn't quite know earlier. And you never know where they're going to go as well. A couple of things we mentioned here. I want to say thank you to Godfrey Daniels for helping support the stream. And also my friends at WDIY. Boom, that's really big in my face. WDIY 88.1. Doing great things here in the Lehigh Valley, and also helping to get the word out about what is going on here on Flex. As I mentioned, coming up next week, Lily Aniel, Lizanne Knott, Catherine Rondeau. And then upcoming, which we have not yet locked in dates for, John Morgan Kimmock and Sarah Harmon. John Morgan Kimmock is a drummer, touring drummer. And Sarah Harmon is a modern dancer and instructor. Both have been out of work since March, and they are a two artist household. In other words, they're married. They have a baby, just a few months old, and they are trying to figure things out during this time as well. And also in a couple weeks, Mark Fitzgerald Wilson is the new executive director at Zollner Arts Center here at Lehigh University in Bethlehem. So thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, be kind and expect nothing in return. Thanks so much. And I'll see you next week.